Hello, personal productivity enthusiasts and community. Welcome to Anything But Idle, the Productivity News Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club, and I'm Ray Sidney-Smith.
And I'm Augusto Pinaud.
And we're your hosts for Anything But Idle. Today's show is episode 53, how art impacts your personal productivity, and we're recording this on April 12th, 2021. Each week, we review and discuss the productivity and technology news headlines of the week, but before we do that, we usually have a theme for the show, and today's theme is all about how art impacts your personal productivity. And so I'm just going to open us up to dialogue here and go with a question around the idea of, what do you think about kind of the discussion around the art and science of personal productivity? I'd like to talk a little bit about how artists approach personal productivity as well. But I know that we have frequently this discussion about kind of the art of personal productivity, even Getting Things Done's subtitle by David Allen. The subtitle is called The Art of Stress-Free Productivity. There seems to be this art form around the principles of productivity. How do you kind of think about it from that perspective, the art and science of productivity?
For many years, personal productivity is sold in one perspective, but really, when you get in, it's an art. It's I have said often that productivity is nothing else than a set of principles, tricks, and habits, and using technology to support it. But those principles, those tricks, those habits, they have a certain art. They have a certain form. And what is even better is they have almost a unique form, because not what works for me will work for everybody else. And it is one of the most beautiful things out of this. There is not okay, you do ABC and your life will be fixed. No, it's way more complex than that. And that's what make it a lot more close to art than not. The last week I have been working with this client for a while, and we reached a big aha moment that came out of something that has zero relationship with what we were working, what we talk, what he do, what I do. But suddenly this serendipity happened, and that thing came, and it produce or generate a big aha for this person. That cannot be produced other than art. If you disconnect from productivity, when is the last time that you look at something and you simply got lost in the time just admiring that thing? And productivity, the art of productivity, yes, it has a lot of scientific backups. It has a lot of repetitive things. You have a lot of technique. But the end result is an art, because it will depend on not only what it is, but where do you want to go? How do you want to get there? And what is the way that you want to accomplish? And all of those, that combination, that mix, that recipe, at the end of the day, it's a form of art.
Yeah, I would agree in large part to what you're saying. I think about productivity from the perspective that it's actually a meshing of art and science in order to be able to improve on one's personal productivity. And the reality is that for any artist, I tend to call them performers in my world, because we know what performance is when it comes to, you have a performance review, you have a performance evaluation, that kind of thing. We think about performance. And the reality is that when we think about performance, we understand it from a number of different perspectives, or stages. And those different stages are that you learn some core amount of material that allows you to be able to get started. So there's a learning process to begin with. We then practice those skills, we have experience with those skills, and ultimately we master those skills and we perform those skills. And it's through that process of going through that arc of going from learning to performance, that which is the art of productivity. The science of productivity are really the enduring principles that underpin why that works, why certain things are the way they are as it relates to productivity. And to be quite honest, science ends up being the thing that we know, it's not the least we know about productivity, but it's the things that we're having an ongoing dialogue about, because we are in an ever changing conversation about what we know about what's going on under the hood. For example, we can define procrastination, but it's not until science looks at it that we then understand the underpinnings of why we procrastinate. We procrastinate because of a psychological reason for procrastination, which means that we need science to be able to bear out the truth of what and why we actually procrastinate, so we can start to learn the more soft reasons, the behavioral reasons why we procrastinate. And so it's actually quite interesting to me to think about the art and science of productivity, because it tends to be that with the art side, the performance side, we actually know how to perform quite frequently. But on the science side, it's the things that we need to learn about the most so that we can apply those things to the art form, which is production. And I wanted to just switch gears then to the conversation of the idea of being an artist and being productive as an artist. So there was a really great article on Lifehack. I'm sorry, it's theabundantartist.com, and I'll put a link to this in the show notes for you, afterward. And the Abundant Artist is all about teaching you how to basically sell art. But the article itself, the article really provides these really great set of tenets for being a productive artist. And, as I have frequently stated about being an artist, being a writer myself, I do a lot of writing, although I'm in the nonfiction space. I'm not in the creative nonfiction space. I find that no matter what type of art you're producing, not just a performance artist, but producing art that is, that's some kind of tangible art. The idea behind production doesn't change. You have to be able to learn how to produce content, and producing content requires some structural productivity principles. Augusto, I know you are a writer, and so as a writing artist, how do you think about the idea of production, of producing in that sense?
And you pick a bad example, because writing is a bear, as you know, and nobody likes to write. Okay, everybody likes to have written. Okay, whoever thinks that you write for love, nobody writes for love. Okay, everybody loves to have written. but at the end, there is more people who go to their own text thinking how bad the text is, and we are terrible critics. That said, we are terrible critics also in productivity. The most productive people that I know, if you will ask them, okay, they will never tell you how productive they are. Okay, they tell you how unproductive they are, how much they can improve, And David Allen used to say, the people who need this the most is the people who need this the most are the people who are not coming to the training. The people who need it the least are the people who are trying to see how far they can toss that rock. And that's part of that art component. It's what can you improve? What can you discover? What can you stylish that are going to allow you to make it easier, better, more fun, or last longer?
Yeah, for me, I have always taken to the Stephen King model, which is produce art every day. Stephen King is very notable for sitting down and writing for set hours every day. He just produces words. And the goal, hopefully, is that with a great deal of practice, and that is sitting down and doing the work, he's capable of becoming a better artist. And I think for all of us, we can take that to heart in the productivity space. To become better at whatever we're doing requires us to sit down and do it every day. And if it's the most important thing that you want to be doing, then you have to be doing it every day. And so it's something that I have certainly tried to hold to. And lately I have not been, but I would like to get back to that place where I am sitting down and writing every day, because if you write every day, you're just going to produce more art, and more art means that you have more options to pick from when it comes to putting that art out into the world. And so that's the one thing I can offer to any artist, no matter where you are, is that if you're producing on a daily basis, it becomes a part of your routine, and that becomes something that you can truly feel good about, which is no matter what the quality of the art is, the art will get better over time as you produce more of it, and that's the most productive part.
Well, and I think you said something critical in there, and it's the word practice. You know, practice of productivity, practice of writing, practice of art in general is something that is never done. You don't find any great artist on history that says, "Oh, I don't need to practice. I just produce." No, no. Practice is big. It's a big component. If you look on sports, practice is a big component. If you any of these things that has a big component of art on it, the practice is a massive component. You are never, when you think you get there in the productivity world, you will discover, oh, there is so much to go. And when you get to that next place, there is so much to go. And the reason for that is a practice. And the reason it's you need to come and practice every day and remind yourself of the victories and remind yourself of, again, the principles, the tricks, and the habits that you have used on the past to be successful. And as I said, technology is only used to support it, but technology change and evolve so fast that sometimes we need to look at those principles, those tips, those tricks, those habits, and how technology has affected them.
Absolutely. Well, with that, we have talked about art and its impact on productivity, and of course, how artists can be more productive. And like I said, that article that I'm putting in the show notes, it's really well worth checking out. It's a really good article. It just covers some really good pieces for artists. If you are thinking about producing art, if you're an artist who is feeling any level of struggle, I feel like those suggestions, the 13 or so items that are suggested, I think are just really good to think about in totality. And so with that, that brings us along to our stories of the week. Augusto, what is our first story this week?
The only word I have about that is Jarvis. So 14.5 will add new voices and no longer will be a female default voice. And I know Apple is not going to let us customize any voice that we want or anything, but I would love to have Jarvis on my phone.
So my quandary there is that on Mac OS, you're able to change the different types of voices in the accessibility settings. Siri has always held to only the female voice, and so I'm presuming they're just expanding and extracting the voices from their accessibility settings into Siri. And I'm hoping that's the case because I actually really like some of the voices that they have in the accessibility features. So I'm hoping that that's just how it's going to roll. I've actually changed in the Google Assistant world, you can change the Google Assistant to be a wide variety of voices. I've changed it to the Australian female voice, and and this is really, I mean, it's comical, but the reason that I've changed it to the female Australian voice is because in the morning, when I asked the Google Assistant to turn on my coffee maker, she says Keurig really funny, and it just makes me laugh when when I ask her and she says I'm turning on the Keurig. It's just a fun way to start my morning, and so I've decided that I like the Australian accent just generally. And it's a nice way to wake up in the morning to that fun, unique pronunciation. But either way, I think more options and choices in this particular category, I think makes a lot of sense. Moving on, what's our next?
Todoist came and now announced that they are going to change their plans and they're going to be named different. They're really trying to rename and rebrand what the premium channels.
Well, there is no longer a premium. Right. It's now Pro, right? They've changed. They created a Pro.
Yes, they're now what used to be the premium. Now it's called the Pro, and they're changing all those names, offering things. The free version now has more capabilities that were not available for the free version before. So they're trying to. There have been a lot of critics about the paid and the free version that I have honestly not understand. I think the free version was good enough, but now they're offering even more. What I hope now is that now they come and do even more for that Pro version, but only time will say.
Julie Bestry's in the chat. Hi, Julie. She says her Siri is an Irish male, and my the Australian female. It's like I can't do it justice, but you just have to in the Google Assistant. You just have to change it to the Australian female voice and ask it to say Keurig. That's all I can say. There's no other way to do it to describe it. I am not a voice person. So anyway, it just makes me laugh. It really does. It makes me giggle just thinking about it. All right, moving right along from Todoist Free and Pro to now some more Apple news.
Apple had this fantastic thing called Find My. Okay, it was initially get Find My Phone, then extended to Find My iPhone, my headphones, my Mac, my everything. But it has always been closed, and a lot of people has criticized it. There was a lot of people having these tags, and there has been rumors for the last year or so that Apple is coming with their own version of tags and how that is going to damage the existing competition. So what we can guess is on lieu of those tags, Apple tags coming in, Apple has decided to open their network, and they start with one that I love, that is a bike. I don't have a bike, but if I will have a bike, I will have a GPS into that thing, especially, with how much they lost. The other one was Belkin, who has been for longest time a partner, close ties with Apple. Now you can find your Belkin earbuds. And the other one was a company that I particularly have not heard about them before this announcement, and it's called Chipolo. And Chipolo, it's basically a tracker similar to what they're saying the Apple version will be. And now you can find your Chipotle, it has a really nice name, into your Find My network. But that said, it is really cool to start seeing Apple open into this. And yes, we understand there is nothing on the good heart of them, is so they can cover for other things. But the expansion to an accessory world into one interface, for me as a user, it's really positive.
Yeah, it makes total sense that they open this up to partners. I'm shocked that they didn't open this up to Tile, or maybe Tile chose not to make this partnership with them. It makes total sense for Tile to do it. I mean, they're going to have to, but it's clear that Apple has an advantage here. There are way more Apple devices out there in the world than there are Tiles, and I'm not sure this ends Tile's business, but it certainly clamps down on their future. I'm concerned for the business now, and they're a great product and they do a great service. But with Samsung working on their own version in the Galaxy brand, and now with Apple working on theirs, that high-end market that's going to buy these types of tracking devices, they're really going to get soaked up by those two major parties. And we'll see if Google comes out and decides to do something like this at some point in the future, because it does make a lot of sense for people who are buying all of these products to want to be able to track it. And again, with the Android platform, you're very easily capable of tracking any Android device. I can see where in the world exactly every one of my Android devices are, and that's helpful, especially when you leave a laptop in the coffee shop and you're like, oh gosh, where is it? You can just log in and find it. You'll now be able to do that with all kinds of tracking attached devices, and I think that's going to be really useful to people.
Yeah, not only that, my parents are old, my in-laws are old, and we have give them iPhones so we can track where they are, and they know, they're aware of this, but it's really comfortable when you call them and they're not picking up the phone, and you can go open the thing and say, okay, they are not home, or they are here, or they are moving, or what is happening. So I think this use of technology, it's more and more critical especially for my parents, for example, is a fantastic piece of technology.
Absolutely. All right, moving right along.
Well, now you can vent to your text application, to your journal application via text message. So one of my favorite application for journal, day one, just released a journal that you can text. So it's a new feature where you can use your text message and text things to your journal application as entering. So if you need to vent, instead of send it to somebody, send it to the journal. You can now use the text, pay for the fee, and be happy. But it is really cool. They're trying to make easier for people to get into the habit of journal. Journal is not necessarily easy, but it's incredibly powerful. So making and giving people more ways to access to journal and to give them, more entries, I believe, is a powerful thing. So I am really excited for day one that released this little feature.
I'll play the devil's advocate here. SMS is not secure. I would not be texting. I would not be texting my journal entries. I don't even say anything that would be all that weird or like somehow incriminating in my journal entries, but I still wouldn't feel comfortable with texting my journal entries into my journal app. But again, I think that if you are trying to use day one for, say, tracking things, you want to like track some kind of habits, or you want to put things in there as you're making your way through the day, or they're coded messages so no one else would know what they are, I think that's okay. But with having, I mean, it's weird to go back to SMS for me when you have the Apple Watch app, you've got the app on your phone, you've got the devices all around you, you're capable of tracking in. I'm really curious why they chose to add SMS as a capture facility in all of the things they could have captured with. Good on them, but I don't think I'm ever going to like capturing via SMS. My task manager of choice, Remember the Milk, has had the ability for you to text tasks into Remember the Milk, and it's had it for many, many years. And I never would use that. Because I was always like, yeah, it's great that they have the facility, but I don't want to use text to add tasks to my system. I guess at one time when you were limited in that sense. All right, moving right along. What's our next story this week, Augusto?
Well, I sent a text message early today to Argelux telling him about the screenshot of my new device, a Galaxy device. Of course, the only way I was going to use a Galaxy device is with the iTest application. Samsung is launching basically a web app that turns your iPhone into a Galaxy device that you can play and discover. It's technically only available on the New Zealand, but because it's a website, you can test it anywhere. So if you are curious what is the experience on a Samsung device, you can download the app. Outside of this story, why do you want to do that? It's a surprise for me, because if anything goes wrong, now what you give the impression is, oh, this experience is not great. You give me one more reason not to leave my iDevice. But Samsung seems to thought that it was a good idea.
Yeah, I don't really understand the premise here. I mean, other than to give people a fun way to play around with it. But I can't imagine what they thought they were doing in this particular regard. I really don't. I mean, it's not a true emulator in the sense of being able to do what you would normally do with an emulator. You can't. It's not persistent that I'm aware of. So you're not really getting the experience of it. And to be quite honest, both Apple and Google, Android, Samsung, you name it, all of them, whether it's the Tizen operating system to Android to iOS, they're all really similar today. I'm the marginal features that separate these operating systems don't particularly make me like one or the other. And so it's not I have several Google Pixels sitting on my desk here. I've got iOS, an iPad on my desk. I've got all kinds of devices. And the mobile experience is actually quite similar on all of them for me. I don't feel myself experiencing the challenge, say 5 years ago, that I had. If you picked up an iOS device and you picked up an Android device, you had a real challenge here. Now the challenge, the items are on the margins, and so I just
cannot agree with you more. I have here the iPads, I have the Android, and it is the same thing. 5 years ago, there was a difference. Today, it's a matter of how you like certain things to behave, but it's not about capabilities or lack of capabilities. There used to be a gap between the capabilities you get on the iOS side versus the capabilities you get on the Android side, and you needed to pick which ones were important for you. More and more, that gap is inexistent. It's how you wanted to do one thing or the other, but it's not about any of those platforms to be able to do or not do.
Yeah, and it's really about your integration with any given platform. If you're in the Apple ecosystem, it makes a lot of sense for you to stay in the Apple ecosystem. If you're in the Android ecosystem and or Windows ecosystem, it makes a lot of sense to be with the Android mobile platform because it's going to have more integration there. That's just the nature of the beast. And I think it's interesting and fun to talk about the differences between these, but there's actually not that much in the sense of being concerned from a perspective that I need to emulate one device on another. Anyway, moving right along to our next item this week.
The next one, I have talked in this show multiple times about Neverware. Neverware, it's a machine that, the Frankenstein that was dying and then resuscitate thanks to Neverware into a Chrome OS. And that machine stopped working, almost working, and then it was inherited by somebody else, to everybody's surprise. But Neverware was bought by Google, and really nobody knew what was the future of that, or at least nobody outside of the close group of Google. But this week we got news that the code of CloudReady is starting to change from GitHub, that is where Neverware had it, to the Google servers, and they are starting to integrate, and that is really, really exciting, because I believe there is, as we said on the previous news note, there is really getting the difference between Chromebook and the power and the capabilities are really short. This idea that you can almost install in any piece of hardware, where Windows will not cover security, Mac will not cover security, and now Google can come and keep it updated and keep it modern and keep it secure. I believe it is really something incredible. So I am particularly excited about seeing this. Not every hardware deserves to have an installation. There is hardware that is simply too ugly for that, but still the news are exciting.
Yeah, I don't think this is necessarily about resuscitating old devices that are kind of just sitting on the tables. I think Chrome OS and the Chrome OS team is really looking to be able to revive old Chromebooks and being able to keep them in some position to continue operating once they fall out of automatic update. They expire from their automatic software updates. And I think that'll be really powerful. I hope that as they go forward, they'll do what Neverware CloudReady was doing, which was allowing people to be able to exhume from the graveyard some of these older devices. I have an old HP laptop that I've been thinking about running a Debian, the latest version of Debian on, and which is Linux kernel-based operating system. But I've been thinking, well, you know what? I could probably get CloudReady on it if I, baling wire and duct tape the pieces together. And it would be really nice if it was a little bit more seamless, if it was just easier for me to be able to say, this is Google sanctioned, let me put this directly on the system and make it work. I think I'm going to have to do a little bit of coding under the hood to be able to make that work on this particular HP laptop because of its age and the state of CloudReady. And so that's just like one of those things where it'd be really nice if Google gave us that capability to bring new life to devices that otherwise are perfectly good hardware. They just can't run the latest operating system of, say, Windows OS or something else like that. So,
well, and I believe with what we experienced with the pandemic, and I hope the scientific are right, and this is only once every 100 years, and I don't need to see the next one. I'm done planning to live 140 years. The reality is the pandemic shows that there is more and more people who struggle at the beginning of this with the devices. And I'm talking about the United States, that is by any main and scale a rich country. So if really Google can sanction this and bring this secure to the third world countries, to those places where now, although not only that will reduce significantly the technology, the waste, but also it's going to allow many of those to really have access to these kinds of technology. And that's something that it's really, really interesting for me.
Absolutely. All right. What's our next story?
Well, let's continue on Google, and we're going talking about Google Chrome 90, the next version of Google Chrome. And it's talking about 7 features that Google 90 is going to bring. And the first one is Google Chrome 90 defaults to HTTPS. And when I read that, I was like, why this hasn't happened before to every really, that was why we wait until version 90? This should have been done. And this is not Chrome, Safari, pick the poison. Okay. Why this has not been done long time ago. So I'm on that one. They are, blocking third-party cookies, improve the PDF viewer, improve the video conferencing, and copy and paste files. And that one in particular was the most exciting one for me because I live on an iOS ecosystem. Okay, I have 2 iPads and an iPhone that I can send files one to the other one. When I want to work on the Chromebook, I can send myself via the Chrome browser from the iPad to the Chrome browser. I can tell them send it to the device, and it will pick my Chromebook like a charm. But if I could use that to send me files, that will end the communication disability that my Chromebook has. That every time I want to send a file, I really need to copy it into Google Chrome and then into the Google Drive and then access it from there. It is not a 3-second action. It is a minute action. If Google can give me that in 90 and eliminate that barrier, I think that is, in my world, incredibly exciting.
Right. And so what we're talking about right now is the browser Chrome 90 as opposed to Chrome
Correct.
OS 90 from the prior article. And just so that people have some background on this, if they had changed HTTP to HTTPS, say 5 years ago, it would have broken about half the internet. And so that's kind of the reason why, which is that Google in essence made some changes a few years ago that in essence forced everybody to go to that HTTPS. Now that we have the vast majority of people with a secure website having that lock icon basically when you're looking in your browser, and since Google is the dominant browser, it makes sense now that they actually default to the HTTPS. And so just so you know, going forward, you are going to see some broken websites. You're going to go to some sites and you're going to see that it says this is not secure, or it won't load, or those kinds of things. And that's because Chrome will now go ahead and say, we're looking for an HTTPS, it's not here, and so therefore we're going to not lead it forward. And so just make sure that you reach out to those. If you go to a website and you like that website, you should tell the developer, hey, by the way, you should get the SSL encryption set up, TLS encryption, so that we can go ahead and continue viewing your website after Chrome 90 comes out. Because once it updates, a lot of those websites are going to go dark, and they're going to lose a lot of traffic once that happens. So, all right, moving right along.
And our final news is Chromebook Files app, and we're talking about Chrome OS again, has now an option to prevent synchronization over mobile. So in the same way you have been able to do in other platforms that has LTE and Wi-Fi, you will be able to come into the files and say, do not sync this over LTE, only do it through Wi-Fi or the network. And again, it is good for people who have limited plans and these kind of things. I think it is a fantastic option.
Yeah, well, it's not even limited plans. It's the fact that, if you are on your Chromebook and didn't realize you hadn't synchronized it in a while, and then you go offline, you go to the cafe, you tether to your device, and then all of a sudden it's downloading all of this stuff, it can be a real bear. And now with more of the Google Workspace, as well as the various applications within Google Workspace capable of working offline. You can go in offline mode in Google Sheets, Google Docs, Google Drive, Google Calendar. Now that you could do all of that, that's a lot of data for it to be synchronizing in the background. And so just forcing the Google Files application to say, okay, I won't synchronize this in the background, because you throw a multi-gigabyte zip file into your Files app, then all of a sudden it starts uploading that. It can really take a ding out of your your current plan for the year. So
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't thought about that. I thought about, but I didn't connect that it's true. You can now work into all those things in the offline mode that you could not until recently. So.
yeah, it's really, really great. All right. With that brings us to our halfway point in the show. And that means we are going to hear a word from our sponsor this week, which is Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. And we will see you after the break.
While working in person may be normal for you, it's unlikely your coworkers are as interested in being productive as you are. Or working remotely or from home can be isolating, and there's something powerful about being with productive people, even virtually, that helps you be more engaged. If a flavor of these sounds familiar, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club is for you. Co-working Space is a virtual work community designed to help members be more effective and efficient in their work and personal lives. At its core, we provide goal tracking and host focused action sessions throughout the week for accountability and camaraderie. Visit anythingbutidle.com/coworking to learn more. Co-working Space lives inside Personal Productivity Club, a digital community for personal productivity enthusiasts, so you can find people who use methods and tools you do too. Again, head over to anythingbutidle.com/coworking to see how Co-working Space can help you be more productive. And now, back to our show.
Welcome back, everybody, to Anything But Idle. I'm Ray Sidney-Smith, and I'm with Augusto Pinaud, and we are going into our second part of the show, where we're going to cover more headlines. We're going to then do our new tools of the week, and then we are going to do our featured story this week, and it's all about T-Mobile. And so very excited about what T-Mobile has in store for us. But that being the case, Augusto, what is our next story this week?
Psych News Daily. 34% of work-from-home workers say they'd rather quit than return to the full-time work. I have only one hope, that maybe all this discussion about going full-time or staying at work or staying behind or the mixed thing, it's going to mean, at least for a while, hopefully forever, the end of the discussion about work-life balance. Sadly, I think it's just going to make it worse. But there is no doubt that work as we understood it as of December 2019 changed forever. And really, it seems like every writer and reporter is right now trying to find what is that solution. And the reality is, we don't know. The reality is, one thing is what we think right now. Do I think it's going to be a more mixed solution? Yes. Do I think it's going to be 100 going in or 100 never coming back? No. That said, as I found somewhere on the web during all this, we are in the same storm, but we are not all in the same conditions. I am fine working at home. I love working at home, and I've been working at home for many years. That's my reality. That's not the reality for everybody. There is people who their connection to the world was that going to home. Yes, you see on some of the studies, one of the articles we're going to quote later talks about a Microsoft study who says that people now have better relationship with their coworkers that they don't see. Yes. Okay. All those things are real. But what the future is going to bring, and if we are going to go full in or not, it will depend. I have somebody close to me who, yes, their conditions are not great. They are in a good place, but they are now too many in the space they have it. And before they were all roaming around. Now they don't fit on the place they are. Yeah, we're lucky. I have an office. We have a basement. But that's not the reality for everybody. Again, we are all in the same storm. Some of us are in small boats. Some people, are on a smaller one. So what is going to happen? It will depend on so many things. The reality is productivity hasn't suffered. And that is a great thing, because all those people who were terrified of productivity suffering has now their numbers showing that is not the case. That said, Can we stay never going out of the houses? No, we need to go out again. Okay, that's
Yes.
and we will cover that in another of the articles we're going to quote today. But that said, all these numbers of the people who are going to quit before going at home, or the company saying, every week I read one article that says, New York is going to die, and then the next day, New York is going to be in the same way as it was in 2018. We don't know. The only thing we know for sure is that it's going to change. It is not going to be what it was December 2019, and it's not going to be what it was December 2020. And I needed to put my rant out of my soapbox, because this is insane.
No, I think you're right though. I think we don't know what's going to happen. Things are changing, and there is a kind of this big birth of opinion by a wide variety of people out there. There are lots of studies being done. One study says 77% of employees don't want to go back to work. 34% would quit before returning to work. And just that statement alone, that someone asked that question, just goes to a point of the privilege of the individuals making that statement, that they could say, oh yeah, I'll just quit my job if I'm not allowed to be able to work from home. We need to be cognizant of the fact that most people are not given that latitude, and that 34% of the people that they surveyed must have been a very, very exclusive crowd, because the average worker wants their job and wants to keep their job. And we're, notwithstanding the recovery of the economy and how that will go about, we are still in a bad economy, in a rough economy, and it will take time for us to get out of that bad economy. And when that happens, the employers know that, and they are already currently finding good employees. Right, we're in that position where employers are struggling finding good employees. At the same time, employees also need to be aware that employers know that if employees are not going to show up to work, they're not going to be so lenient in a bad economy when it gives them an opportunity to potentially cut some costs. So be mindful of that fact as we make our way forward. That being the case, I think you're absolutely right. We're going to continue seeing these articles. We're going to still see more research being done. And I'm actually pleased to see us having this conversation. If nobody was talking about this, it would actually be far worse for me, because then we are not getting this conversation out in the open. We need to be having these open dialogues with employees and with employers, especially managers who just really don't know how to manage properly. And so therefore they're clinging on to the vestiges of, if I don't see people working, then they're not working. And the only way for us to overcome that fact is for them to really sit with the fact that they need to do more work in order to manage now, that they otherwise didn't have to before. But just because someone's out of sight doesn't mean that they are not actually being productive. And the pandemic has proven that to be the case. And it's not without challenges. It's not without problems for individuals. And we need to be able to support those individuals to be productive, even when they do need to work from home, and also when they go back to work, because it won't be the same. If you're the person who's an extrovert and you want to go back to the office, and it's, you thrive on the interaction, but you're now not going to see anybody at the office because you're the only one going back. It's like the reverse problem, right? You're going to see, maybe a third of your staff at any given time coming back to the office, which may mean that you don't see any of your normal coworkers that you're used to coffee clutching with. That's just a reality of what we're dealing with. And it takes good management to come in and say, let's do stuff that's really going to help people be productive here and solve for these kinds of problems. So I'm glad we're having this dialogue. We're going to see more of the conversation going forward, and we have to keep having this conversation. Next up.
Well, the next one, it's an article that I really enjoy, Harvard Business Review, How to Beat Procrastination. And the article, goes into, we all procrastinate. With the human's brain is programmed to procrastinate. And they make a good point. But when you go down, it gives you some strategies, how to really get it down, visualize how to get it done, pre-commit, publicly. I don't know about that. Okay. But get now and study, get the action feel smaller. Cut it into small pieces. See if you can tie the first step with a treat. And my favorite one was remove the hidden blockage. And the remove the hidden blockage is one of the things that I learned when I read that first time, or maybe fifth time, I don't know, the Getting Things Done book. Okay, when he described exactly that. Well, call Bob. Oh, why you haven't called Bob? I don't know. Do you have Bob's phone number? I don't have Bob's phone number. Oh, do you know anybody who knows Bob's phone number? Oh, yeah, Ray knows Bob's phone number. Well, and you have seen Ray every Monday in Anything But Idle, but you have not asked about the phone number. And that happened to all of us. Okay, that has happened to me many times, that you put the task, but you put it so fast that you didn't think if you really have all the information, all the tools to make it moving forward. So that remove that hidden blockage, look into the task, figure it out. What is that hidden blockage? It is one of the best tools against procrastination.
Absolutely. There's so many reasons why we procrastinate. I think the ultimate, reasoning we can surmise is the mind's feeling that it's somehow not safe, right? And we talk about psychological safety as being a mechanism for us being able to take risk. And procrastination frequently comes from that space. It's in some way, shape, or form our unconscious has set up the flare, and it feels in this emergency state. And that's because, as the article noted, doing the concrete, which is, move this widget from one table to the next, is very easy for us to understand. But develop a project proposal is an abstraction of any number of kinds, and we need to bring that down to the actionable level, which is why I've been such a great advocate of the Getting Things Done methodology, because it takes the abstract in our mind and makes us have to think about what is the next physical action, because it's those physical actions that really move things forward. And it helps us just to anchor what needs to be done. It doesn't mean it's the thing that's going to be done, but it gives us a physical representation to grease the wheels to get us going and moving forward. Because I might do that thought process that you did, Augusto, and thought, okay, oh no, I need to call so. Oh no, I need to. Oh no, but I need to. Oh, but before I do that, then I need to. Oh, right, that's the next action I need to do, and I'll anchor that particular item in, and then I come across that next action in the right context, and I recognize that that's actually not what I want to do. Right? I might want to sit down and do some doodling, but being able to sit down and brainstorm or mind map in that sense gives me a great deal of power that I otherwise wouldn't have had and may have procrastinated on doing if I was not given the choice of just looking at the concrete items in front of me. So great article. Always good to read these articles on procrastination and look at it from different avenues and different perspectives to be able to overcome it. What's our next article?
The next article comes from the New York Times, and it's called "We Have All Hit the Wall." And it gets into discussing what they call the late stage pandemic burnout. And yeah, I think we are, there are so many good points into that article. I need to admit that I laugh when it's describing this person who say, you know what? I am on a quasi house arrest for the last year. And I think most of us agree and feel that way and are exhausted. And there is a lot of people who has failed to consider the mental cost of all this. It's not if we can work or not work more or less, if we can accomplish more or less, but it's where we set the expectations versus what we can really accomplish. And, the person that we're describing on the article says, I'm tired all the time and I'm not doing anything. Well, that's not true. And if you are feeling that way, that's not true. You are just doing a bunch of different things that you were not need to do before. It's one of the things is 3 meals a day. Sorry. Most people, did 2, or 1. Now you need to do 3, plan for 3. Decision making is one of the most exhausting things we can do. And that has been proved over and over. And that's why you see certain people, certain famous personalities, Steve Jobs being one of those, Barack Obama being another one, who cut certain decisions. They only wear certain things, so they don't need to decide what to wear in the morning. It's going to match. The bottom and the tops are going to match no matter what they pick, because making decisions consistently is really exhausting. And one of the things a lot of us don't notice is the distraction and the decisions. For us who have kids, the kids come in here. Can I play the game? You need to make a decision, yes or no. And I understand it sounds simple decision, but you need to make it. And
it's death by 1,000 cuts. It's over and over and over. Yeah.
Correct. It happened to me over the weekend. Again, I had all these plans. What happened to me? Well, I had a kid who wanted to spend time with me, not with me. He did not want to me playing with him. He wanted to be in my office, okay, and wanted to show me stuff that he was doing every 3 minutes. Awesome. Okay, it was a great moment for dad and son to spend together, except that I was trying to read a book and he was trying to play a game. So every 3 minutes, he come to show me that he solved the puzzle. And every 3 minutes, I get interrupted into the book I was trying to read. And after 90 minutes, I was like, I have read 2 pages. Okay, and I was really upset. And took me to reframe, because if you ask me, no, I didn't accomplish anything in those 90 minutes on the task world. Okay, but on the other world, okay, he was really happy that he had spent 90 minutes with me. So we also need to look into these things, especially as this pandemic seems to be some more months, and to reframe those things and to be conscious that it's not that we are not doing. What rule are we using to measure accomplishment or doing versus not doing, and try to adjust and be kind with ourselves?
Yeah, I can offer 2 things here. One is to restate what you said. In psychological parlance, reframing is looking at the situation differently through a different lens, so to speak, but basically thinking about it from a different perspective. And that could be a different mindset. It could be a different attitude toward it, and maybe zooming out or zooming in on the perspective, I think is very, very helpful, and it's been validated helps with regard to distress. The second is present-mindedness. We can call this mindfulness. We can call it any number of things. But the idea is that if you bring yourself into the moment, right here, right now, then the thing you are doing becomes that much more, I think interesting, fulfilling in some way, shape, or form. There were times in my life where I didn't particularly find eating, for example, to be a productive activity. I thought it was fruitless. I thought it was just a waste of time. Sleep was in and among those things. And as I did more study of the literature, I recognized that these things are really powerful and important to both life experience, but also to our biological ability to be productive. And so they became more important to me. And the more you bring yourself to present mindedness around the doing of those things, that is like even just picking up your plates from the dining room table and washing them off and putting them in the dishwasher. If you're mindful about those things, being in the present actually reduces anxiety, reduces that distress, and is actually far more useful to you than thinking about all the other things you would, could, or should be doing. And so bring yourself more to the present moment. If you have a feeling of that level of stress, I'm not saying it's going to solve for this level of pandemic, stress that's happening, but I feel like it can't but help in some way, shape, or form, even in some small way. So, all right, moving right along to our next couple of stories, Augusto.
Note-taking app Mem raised $5.6 million from Andreessen Horowitz. I have not been able to play with it. I am on that list, God knows for when. But it is interesting to see, how Coda raised money, Rome raised money, Notion raised money, Evernote, who has been an old gamer, came to really I may butcher it, but Evernote came to really redesign and re-envision everything that they have done in a new platform, in a new way, and how this note-taking market is getting more and more attention, and to finding ways to make it. And this new free app called Mem, it's a platform that is going to be dedicated to make quick notes. That said, we need to see. I haven't played with it. I'm curious about the back end. I'm curious if you're just going to make notes, and not being able to process, organize them, or what is going to be, and again, I have not been able to play. I have a nice email that says I am on a list, and someday they may or may not call me.
Well, again, it goes back to this whole like capturing your these notes via any modality, and of course, mem or meme or however they're going to pronounce their name. They talk about capturing via SMS. Again, why on God's great creation would I want to text message my note taking application? If there are folks out there who you're thinking about capturing via SMS, please. There are better ways. There are just simply better ways to capture than by SMS. Certainly more secure, but I like the idea of what MEM is trying to do here, which is the idea that you are able to seamlessly capture from anywhere. They talk about this idea of bringing MEM to a place where you can capture from your watch and from other kinds of wearables, from assistive devices and that kind of thing. The idea of it being embedded everywhere, I think, is really powerful and important, but it doesn't and shouldn't end there. And I think that's where I'm really curious to see how MEM will go from this point, which is, they give very easy sharing capabilities, being able to connect what you're putting into the system and being able to then tie them together, this whatever their ontological approach is to notes. And so we'll see what happens. I mean, they clearly have some thoughts about how to do these things and reorganize the content in a way that seems interesting. My problem with this whole notion of making tools so opinionated, hey.com is one of those, this very opinionated email program. There's to some extent where some of it may work, but it won't work for the vast majority of people. And if it only is going to work for a small majority of people, that's fine, or a small minority of people, that's fine. I'm not quite sure that's going to really break through in the market. So we'll see what happens. They've got this $5.6 million to burn down, and we'll see where they get to with the product. And certainly, just like any other application that's in a waiting list mode, they're up against the clock, right, to get enough users on so that they can go ahead and get those people introduced to it, so that they get enough of a user base to then figure out how they're going to monetize, what their business model is going to be. And I don't know, but we'll see. I'm curious to play around with it myself. I'm on the waiting list, and we'll see when I get access to it, and I'll certainly play around. But I'm not skeptical. I'm always interested to see these products, but I guess I am skeptical, but I'm not skeptical in a cynical way. I'm skeptical in the sense that I want to see how they're actually organizing content that's being captured and the security of that content, because as I said before, SMS is not secure. And that like just the idea that they would put that front forward as their marketing component just really concerns me. But I may just be taking a marginal marketing statement and making too big a deal out of it. But we'll see what happens. All right. What's our final story?
The evidence is in. According to The Guardian, working from home is a failed experiment. And that's all that I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, so again, you're gonna get people on both sides of the aisle here, and Gene Marks is a noted small business opinion columnist on in many different publications, and he's writing here that he's basically seen the results. He talks about Microsoft saying that somehow their study shows or proves that employees are failing in some way, shape, or form this experiment. I disagree with his reading of the report. I don't think that that's what it says. And there are countless other reports that show the exact opposite of this. So we have to be mindful of the fact that not every organization is the same. If I'm in a business that has 20 employees and Microsoft is a business with tens of thousands of employees, this is a much different environment to be able to manage people, and the data sets are going to show you different data. And it could be that if you have a set of artisans working in a small business of 5 people, they may be able to work only in person because it requires them to work on physical material together. Who knows what the environments are, but we've got to let this play out before we start calling anything failed experiments. I think it's ridiculous.
That's all.
All right. With that, that ends our stories this week. And let's head into our new tools of the week, talk about our featured story of the week, and close out. So, of course, as you know, Augusto and I come across many personal productivity tools and services each week. In this segment, New Tools of the Week, we try to bring you a tool we think you might like. And so with that, let's get into the new tools this week. The first tool, let me just bring this on the screen here for everybody. And I am pressing wrong buttons here, so bear with me a moment. The first tool is a tool that actually I found in search of solving a problem of my own. And so this tool is called Pleaksy. I'm guessing it's called Pleaksy. But Pleaksy is a tool that allows you to, in essence, synchronize, not just move tasks from one place to the other, but truly synchronize, which is brilliant, Microsoft To-Do tasks and Todoist tasks. Now, it integrates with a wide variety of other tools. So you can see here, if you click on the Microsoft To-Do tab here, you can see that it goes ahead and synchronizes with Asana, Basecamp, ClickUp, Evernote, Gmail, Jira, Monday, OneNote, Outlook, and Trello. So you're capable of, again, this is like a true synchronization of those tasks. On the Todoist side, they've got it looks like the same ones. Augusto, are you seeing, there must be some difference between them. Do you see a difference? I see 7, I see 9, 10, and I see 10 here. So it seems to be the same 10.
Seems
I'm not
to be
quite
the
sure.
same, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know why
Sorry,
they have
I did
the
not
tabs.
check. I did not check the Microsoft side. I checked the Todoist side for me.
Right, of course. So it's synchronizing the same 10 from Microsoft To Do and for Todoist, and so this gives you synchronization for these particular tools, which is phenomenal. I'm just really excited to see how this will really work, and it does have a pricing schedule that goes beyond 2 connections. You'll have to pay about $3.33 USD per month, billed on an annual basis. But there is a free option here. You can connect any of the supported applications. That is just 2 of them. So that is Microsoft To Do and one other connection, and then Todoist or one other connection. And it has a slower synchronization, so 5 minutes as opposed to real time. And so really nominal in terms of pricing, especially if you stay on the free plan. And you can set up rules. So you can say here, I want to stay in sync with these particular tools, and I can also set up task rules so certain types of tasks don't synchronize, or only certain types of tags synchronize, and it can do that for you as well. So it uses OAuth, so it's secure. And yeah, I'm really pleased to see how Pleaksy works with these applications, and you should try it out if you're using Todoist or Microsoft To Do and you want to be able to get them out of the system, or if you're, say, in Asana or Evernote or Outlook and you're trying to get them out of that system and into your task manager of choice. You now have a synchronization tool that can do it, which is really powerful.
Yes,
All right, Augusto.
I am really excited to see this. There is a certain project that lives in Asana that it's problematic for me, and now this may be the solution for that.
Fantastic. What is your tool this week?
Co-Notes. And Co-Notes give you Cornell method notes into any browser. I've been using Cornell Notes for, I don't know, a really long time, and it's really useful for me. But I can only do it in paper. Have not ever find a really good way to do it when I type. Now you can do it with this. Works on any browser. You can open the browser, and then after that, it will turn that thing into a PDF, and you can do with that whatever you want. So it's been something really fun to play with and to use for taking notes in meetings. So.
Great, I love it. And you can preview. It doesn't look like it has any sharing functionality, but you can still create these items and then share them very easily.
Right, you can turn them into PDF and then you can share them.
Fantastic. So that's Co-Notes, and Co-Notes is at conotes.io, but we'll put links to these in the show notes for you all to be able to access that. All right, Augusto, that brings us to our story this week. And as I said earlier, this is all about T-Mobile doing some fancy new work in the 5G space. What's T-Mobile doing?
So now that 5G is out, or in a lot of places, T-Mobile is trying to debut at home with their 5G home, and their initial offer is no data cap and $60 a month without contract. That actually is impressive. We have Verizon Fios here at home, and we pay more than that. And there is a contract, and you need to do a bunch of things in order to get that rate, where it is. The fact that you are making that you have no cap, that you have no limit, if you can really get good internet on many places, this is going to be for as long as it lasts. I mean, it's going to be a fantastic solution. One of the things we learned with the pandemic, with the number of devices connected, is we don't have enough bandwidth. So I even check it to see if we can split, the load between the devices that we have, because it will have been worth it too. It's not available where I live right now, but it will have been worth it if availability will have been a possibility.
Yeah, I'm really curious how they're going to make the 5G light up the home. Presumably, there's got to be some connection between the 5G tower and some device in the household that then, some kind of receiver that receives the signal and then propagates it to Wi-Fi. Presumably, that's how it works. I have to look into it and see how that would work. And if they can bring 5G to more and more places, that will be really, really great. I just think it's a great other option to have for being able to light up your home without having to be dependent on so many other monopolies in areas where, if you want high-speed internet access, you only have a choice of one provider, sometimes maybe two, and that's a real problem in the United States specifically, but probably the case in other countries as well. Some folks have nationalized internet backbone, and then the last mile is provided by some other provider. We'll see what happens here in terms of this. I also see a really great small business opportunity here for small businesses to be able to access broadband internet access, and we'll see what happens as we move forward. And of course, there's Starlink, which is the Elon Musk-driven satellite-based internet, and that's going to be providing internet to really anywhere on the planet now. You can basically get good internet access, hopefully, except if you're underground, I suppose. But the hope is that as we get more and more of this infrastructure in place, we'll be able to light up places that otherwise wouldn't have access to it. 5G is a little bit more limited in that sense because it's a short range frequency, so it needs a lot more towers to be able to provide coverage. But I see satellite being kind of the next big thing. I'm glad to see T-Mobile bringing this to the market, and we'll see what happens as they grow. T-Mobile is pretty aggressive about being forward-thinking and innovative with regard to their plans, and there are a lot of MVNOs that run on top of T-Mobile, as well as Sprint, which they recently acquired, or they merged or whatever. So now we're going to see a lot more of these opportunities proliferate because of the MVNOs, which presumably at some point would be able to resell the home internet based on those plans that T-Mobile are putting out. So I'm curious to see all of that come together. Either way, that brings us to, do we have any announcements that we want to talk about this week?
We have a couple, but we will put them on the show notes. One of them was an interesting article about, how to schedule meetings in Microsoft Outlook. There is so many things that Microsoft has added to Outlook that it is interesting to see, to get this tutorial. There is an interesting article in a dispute on which Google got a favor from the Supreme Court between Dan and Oracle in Android software. There is also WhatsApp testing chat migration between iOS and Android if you decide to change. And the sad announcement is that Woven, it's going to be shutting down on May 28, 2021. Woven was a service that allows you to make appointments for multiple people. It was really interesting concept, but sadly they announced that May 28th they will be out of business.
Yeah, so I will note that the Google Oracle case is landmark. It'll be, I think, it'll be taught in law schools in, for in future forevermore. It's a landmark case to finally come down and kind of have some sense of settlement at the Supreme Court level in the United States. And so landmark fair use case for one. Two, it's lasted like more than a decade and a half. So it was great to see this come down. And Google won, of all things, this case about the use of Java, or this very little bit of Java code that is built into Android now. And so I'm glad to see it come down. It also means that Android gets to live on as Android has been. And without $9 billion being shuffled over to Oracle, I bet Oracle's a little bit peeved that it doesn't get a cash day on this. But it was, I think, the right choice. I think the justices looked at the case and recognized that this wasn't really particularly anything, the amount of money that Oracle could have made is de minimis from Google's use of Java in this case. So, sorry, Oracle. They bought the whole product just so that they could sue Google, and they lost out from all of this litigation. So that's on them, and it just goes to show that sometimes being litigation happy doesn't benefit you, and that proved to be beneficial to Google in this case. So with that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you, Augusto, as always, for joining me here on Anything But Idle and helping put the show on.
As always, it's my pleasure. I'm the one having fun here.
And with that, we've covered the productivity news for this week. That's, of course, Augusto Pinaud. And if we've missed any stories, please feel free to head over to anythingbutidle.com. You can tweet or DM us on Twitter at anythingbutidle also. So on anythingbutidle.com, you can leave a question or a comment directly on the show episode page or on the contact page. Click on contact and you can go ahead and do that. Back on the show page for the episode page, you'll find our show notes with links to all the stories we discussed, including the extra stories and the announcements that Augusto just outlined, our tools of the week. We have our extra stories, and we also have text transcripts, both in a read version that you can just click on the read more link. That'll expand the transcript for you to read along while listening or watching. And then, of course, you can download it as PDF, so you can download it and read along as well. If this is your first time watching the live stream, feel free to click the subscribe button on YouTube. That'll help you get notified when we go live weekly. If you're listening to the podcast after the fact, feel free to consider adding us to your favorite podcast app. You can click on subscribe or follow depending upon your podcast app, and you'll go ahead and be able to get the new episodes downloaded each week. If you go to anythingbutidle.com, you'll see instructions on the follow page. It might say subscribe or follow, and you'll find instructions to go ahead and follow or subscribe to us and get the episodes downloaded every week for you there. And it's free. If you've enjoyed spending time or listening with us today, feel free to click the thumbs up icon, or if you're in the podcast, feel free to add a rating or review, and that really helps us find new personal productivity friends. And so thank you for doing that. With that, we'll see you all next time on Anything But Idle. Here's to your productive life.